The movie opens in Honduras, where a young girl, Rocio, and her family become entangled in a dangerous situation. Rocio catches the interest of a woman named Giselle, who claims to see potential in her for the entertainment industry. Giselle proposes an audition at her agency, intriguing Rocio's father, Roberto. As they discuss this opportunity, Rocio's younger brother, Miguel, enters and inadvertently draws Giselle's attention as well. The following day, Roberto takes Rocio and Miguel to the supposed audition held in a motel room, where several other children are also present. He leaves them there, promising to return the next day. Inside, Giselle has the children pose for photographs. However, when Roberto comes back, he is met with a parent's worst nightmare. The room is empty, and his children are nowhere to be found. A frantic search of the motel and its vicinity yields no clues to their whereabouts. Surveillance footage from street cameras chillingly reveals child kidnappers abducting children in various locations, including his own. Months later, the scene shifts to California. A man named Ernst is shown browsing a sinister website featuring videos of trafficked children. Unbeknownst to him, his online activities are being closely monitored by a team from Homeland Security Investigations. As Ernst uploads a video, the team executes a rapid and coordinated raid on his residence. They apprehend him and discover a disturbing scene in his garage. An array of children's toys and extensive files, with details on his numerous young victims. Back at their headquarters, an agent named Chris confides in his superior, Special Agent Tim, about his intention to resign. The emotional weight of the horrific cases involving children has become unbearable for him. Tim, despite having successfully apprehended 288 criminals involved in child trafficking, is confronted with the harsh reality that the majority of the victims are overseas, limiting their ability to bring justice. Their mission is primarily focused on capturing perpetrators within the country. Deeply affected by the case, Tim decides to personally confront Ernst in his cell. Utilizing the quiet of the empty building, Tim takes Ernst to the courtyard, aiming to gain his trust through deception. Tim feigns a shared interest in Ernst's criminal activities, even claiming to have read Ernst's book to get him to lower his guard. This extended conversation appears to sway Ernst, who begins to trust Tim. The emotional toll of his work follows Tim home, where his family understands the immense strain he endures. The next day, Tim secures permission from his supervisor to extend his undercover operation with Ernst by a week. In a risky move, Tim temporarily releases Ernst, promising to assist in eliminating his 30-year prison sentence in exchange for information leading to a child. Initially hesitant, Ernst eventually agrees and sets up a meeting with a contact. Tim discreetly follows Ernst, capturing photographs of the contact, advancing their investigation into the dark world of child trafficking. The plot unfolds with a critical moment when Ernst presents Tim with a photograph of Miguel, a young boy targeted for trafficking. Tim confirms a plan to hand Miguel over the next day, but then reveals it was a strategic setup and arrests Ernst. The day after, Tim and his team of officers assemble at the border, ready for Ernst's contact to arrive. Upon his arrival, they meticulously check both his and Miguel's passports to confirm his identity. After confirming, Tim quickly apprehends the contact and approaches the car to talk to Miguel. The boy is visibly scared, but Tim gently speaks to him in Spanish, asking for his real name and reassuring him as he takes him to the hospital for a medical checkup. At the hospital, a nurse conducts a comprehensive examination of Miguel and confirms the unfortunate signs of recent sexual abuse. Later, in the calm atmosphere of a diner, Tim and Miguel sit down for a meal, during which Tim learns more about the boy. Miguel reveals that he is 8 years old and calls Tim Timoteo, a name that matches the inscription on a necklace given to him by his sister, Rocio. Rocio had told Miguel that a person named Timoteo rescues children, instilling hope in Miguel that Tim might also find Rocio. Miguel's recollection of his experiences, including the fear and uncertainty of being trafficked and eventually purchased by Ernst's contact, is heart-wrenching. In an emotional scene, Miguel is finally reunited with his father, Roberto. The joy of their reunion is palpable as Miguel runs to embrace his father. Tim informs Roberto that Miguel likely spent approximately 3 months in Tijuana before being rescued. As they prepare to part ways, Miguel, in a touching gesture of gratitude, offers his necklace to Tim. The following day, Tim confronts Ernst's contact, using the leverage of extradition to Colombia to extract critical information about Giselle, the woman involved in trafficking. He successfully obtains a detailed description of her and relays this information to the Colombian police. The film then shifts focus to Rocio, who is enduring a traumatic ordeal. She is forcibly tattooed with a crown symbol on her neck and subjected to staying with a foreigner in a bedroom. In a heart-wrenching moment, she is later seen crying in a dirty bathtub, finding comfort only in singing to herself. Back at the Homeland Security Office, Tim passionately advocates for being assigned to Rocio's case, determined to rescue her and bring her home. Initially, his supervisor is hesitant, citing limited resources and concerns for Tim's emotional state. However, Tim's persistent commitment and sense of responsibility ultimately convinced the supervisor to approve his request. Upon arriving in Cartagena, Tim is greeted by Jorge, a local police officer. Jorge introduces Tim to Vampiro, a former cartel accountant who has since dedicated his life to rescuing trafficked children. After Vampiro verifies Tim's sincere intentions, he agrees to help find Rocio. Vampiro reveals that Giselle, their primary target, is a former beauty queen and a cautious, elusive figure in the world of child trafficking. To infiltrate Giselle's network, Tim proposes a daring plan. They will create a front for a sex club, similar to one in Thailand, to attract clientele like Giselle's. Tim suggests enlisting the support of wealthy Paulo Delgado to fund the operation. He discusses this strategy with Vampiro and asks if he knows anyone who could supply a significant number of children for their sting. Vampiro reconnects with Calicus, an old contact, and sets up a meeting with Tim. In this meeting, Tim poses as a wealthy individual, aspiring to open an exclusive club, and challenges Calicus to provide 50 children for it. Calicus admits he cannot meet such a large demand, which aligns with Tim's real intention to use him as a connection to Giselle. This strategic move is a key part of Tim's plan to dismantle the child trafficking ring and rescue Rocio. Meanwhile, Tim faces pressure from his supervisor, who is frustrated by the lack of tangible results despite significant resources spent on the operation. His supervisor orders him to return home, but Tim is inspired to continue after hearing Vampiro's story. Vampiro started rescuing trafficked children after an incident where he mistakenly became involved with a minor. Believing he was called by a higher power to this cause, Tim decides to resign from his position, even though he is close to receiving his pension. Tim then convinces Paulo, a potential financial backer, to support his sting operation. He shares the harsh realities of child trafficking and shows Paulo a picture of Rocio, the girl they aim to rescue. With the team formed, they meticulously plan the sting to be as convincing as possible. Calicus passes on information about the large transaction to Giselle and other traffickers. They are all invited to meet Tim, Vampiro, and Paulo in Bogota, where Giselle confirms she can supply at least 50 children. As the operation draws near, Tim secures support and monitoring assistance from the US Embassy in Colombia. The team sets up the raid at a secluded resort on a private island. However, the traffickers arrive with fewer than 30 children, not meeting the agreed number. Despite this, the operation continues, with Tim and his team playing along. During the transaction, tensions rise when Carne, the trafficker's lawyer, and a bodyguard escort a child to a private room. Tim tries to intervene, leading to a standoff that Vampiro diffuses. As the remaining children are brought to the island, the raid is executed, framing Carne as an informant. After the raid, Jorge informs Tim that they rescued 54 children, but unfortunately, Rocio is not among them. Tim and Vampiro reflect on the operation as they watch the rescued children, calling their laughter the sound of freedom. Jorge later obtains information from an apprehended trafficker, leading them to El Alacrán, who is suspected of having Rocio. Despite the risks, Vampiro suggests a plan to infiltrate Alacrán's camp disguised as doctors. Jorge provides fake credentials and advice from real doctors to prepare them for the mission. As they set off for the jungle region, Jorge equips them with GPS trackers for safety. As they make their way to Niño province, Tim sends a final message to his wife, signaling the beginning of a perilous yet crucial mission to rescue Rocio and confront El Alacrán. Tim and Vampiro begin their perilous journey by boat to infiltrate Alacrán's camp and rescue Rocio. Their mission takes a dangerous turn when they encounter armed men who suspect them of trespassing. Despite the tension, Tim and Vampiro successfully convince their captors of their medical guise. However, the armed men decide that only one of them can continue to Alacrán's camp, and Tim volunteers, leaving Vampiro behind. Upon arriving at Alacrán's camp, Tim initiates a conversation with Alacrán, pretending to be concerned about vaccinating his people against disease. Alacran, distrustful and brutal, declares that he will kill anyone who falls ill. As Tim wanders through the camp, he notices children crushing cocoa leaves. Among them, he spots Rosio. Calling out her name, he confirms her identity when she responds. Tim discreetly approaches Rosio, pretending to conduct a medical examination. He quietly inquires about her living arrangements in the camp. Their conversation is cut short when Alacran summons Tim to attend to his men. As night falls, Tim locates Rosio asleep in a cabin. When he wakes her, the trauma she has endured causes her to scream. The scream alerts Alacran, who comes to investigate. Thinking quickly, Tim instructs Rosio to act as if the scream was due to a nightmare. He hides under the bed as Alacran enters the cabin. A tense and violent struggle ensues, with Tim ultimately stabbing and killing Alacran in a desperate fight for survival. With Alacran dead, Tim and Rosio make a daring escape from the camp under the cover of darkness. They manage to reach a boat on the river, but Alacran's men, realizing their leader is missing, begin a frantic search. Tim and Rosio race to the riverbank, where Vampiro and Jorge are waiting. Despite being pursued and shot at by Alacran's men, they escape unharmed. In a touching reunion, Tim returns the necklace given to him by Miguel to Rosio. Roberto, the children's father, receives the call he has been longing for, informing him that Rosio is safe. At the hospital, Rosio wakes up to find her father and brother by her side, leading to an emotional and tearful reunion. The family returns home, where Rosio is seen playing her bongos, her music symbolizing her newfound freedom and joy. The movie, based on true events, highlights the real Tim's continued efforts in Colombia to dismantle the trafficking ring. His dedication leads to legislative changes in the United States, enhancing international cooperation in child trafficking cases. The movie concludes with a powerful message about the severity of human trafficking, particularly the heartbreaking reality of child trafficking. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our video. Watch the next recaps on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.